This is Outnumbered, and I'm Melissa Francis, and here today is Harris Faulkner, Town Hall editor and Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich, syndicated radio host and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall, and joining us today, co-host of Fox and Friends, Brian Kilmeade, author of Sam Houston and the Alamo Avengers, now in paperback. Leslie, let me ask you, because Politico this morning saying the general election scenario that Democrats are dreading, and that's this rebound right now. We are about to see the best economic data we've seen in the history of this country, says the top former economic advisor to President Obama. And the thought is that if the economy takes off in great guns in October, that could be very bad for Democrats. Your thoughts?
I don't think so, Melissa, because before COVID-19, really the strength of the president's platform in his campaign and bid for re-election was the economy, and a strong economy. And quite frankly, a strong economy helps any politician. I mean, because Democrats can go home to their state, too, and say, hey, I was a part of it. You know, politicians left or right can spin it any way they want. I think really at the end of the day, it's going to be how do people perceive that the president in this administration handled COVID-19, and that goes beyond the economy. And as you mentioned earlier, there are different stories and scenarios in different states. I'm sitting and live in the largest state in the country. We have pockets of California that have zero COVID-19 cases. That's not the case here in Los Angeles County, where I sit. So I think it also, if you look at just the exit polls after the midterms and even polling now, if people love the president, they're going to champion him and give him credit for the economy and think he handled COVID-19 well. And those who don't like him are going to be opposite. But what are those people on the fence? What are those independent voters and those swing state voters going to say? That's what it comes down to.
Okay, so Leslie, it's this notion that if you mail out millions of ballots at the same time, that invites fraud, because everyone knows they're on their way, they're going to the mailbox, they're all coming at the same time. Does that invite fraud or no?
No, I don't think so. The military has been using mail-in voting since the Civil War. The president himself votes by mail. A lot of people choose to vote by mail, whether they're elderly, whether they have difficulty with transportation, whether the voting place is not close to where they live. They're disabled. The list goes on. Look, 72%, according to a Reuters Ipsos poll of Americans, and that includes Republicans, want to have the option to mail in their ballot, because there are people that are afraid of COVID-19. And I feel that in the state where I live, the governor is trying to do what is best for the people of his state and safety of the people of the state. This doesn't take away the right to show up and vote in person if you so choose. This just makes it easier for those in California. And Brian, you read my mind, because quite frankly, California is a very blue state. California is most likely, as it has for decades, going to go to the Democratic nominee for president. And I know you talk about congressional seats, but you only have a couple. And in 2018, we didn't have a lot of mail-in voting, and it still flipped in Democrats' favor. Okay. And added to that, the president actually could benefit, because a lot of elderly people, and certainly military, vote with mail-in ballots. This will actually perhaps help conservatives and Republicans in certain races. Okay. I don't see this as a political thing. Mm-hmm. I see this as safety for the voters in this state.
Joe Biden appearing in public for the first time since mid-March to honor fallen soldiers over the Memorial Day weekend. It comes after he set off a firestorm Friday morning for saying African-American thinking, or those blacks thinking of voting for President Trump, quote, ain't black. Later Friday, he apologized in a conference call with black business leaders. You know, Leslie, what's complicated about Joe Biden coming back and trying to apologize is all of the whataboutism that's gone on about this issue. Well, what about what President Trump says? What about what others in politics say? He's a former vice president. He's run for president. This is his third time. He's never been victorious. So you really don't want missteps when you're just coming out of the basement the first time, right? So was it enough to do that? Does he need to hit it again? And what should he be saying to all black voters? We are all different people.
Absolutely. I'm a white woman, and I was offended by the comment, and I think it was important that he apologized. But what I found interesting, Harris, were African Americans that were calling into my show on Friday when this happened. Largely, 99.9% were saying either listen to the entire interview, 18 minutes in length, and take it in context. They were saying, look, I don't like what he said, but I'm still going to vote for him anyway. Some of them said that they were upset with what they were calling fake white outrage. But at the end of the day, when you look at, to Brian's point, Brian, I would agree with you that Joe Biden is perhaps selecting the next president after him of the United States, especially if he only serves one term. And I know a lot of people are saying, even though he promised to have an African-American Supreme Court justice he would place on the bench of president, that this really pushes him to have not only a minority, but specifically an African-American female, as he said, female running mate. But I think he should have had that before. So I think, if anything, this may actually benefit the Democratic Party and push him in the right direction, because when he was vetting, quite frankly, a lot of white VP candidates, when he was vetting a lot of white VP candidates, Harris, I was sitting there saying, how can we say that we are a party of diversity and that the Democratic Party is diverse and we represent, and we represent a diverse nation, which we are. I was always and continue to root for those minority candidates that he's been vetting for VP.
A former top network news executive is calling out the media in a Wall Street Journal op-ed. Van Gordon Souter, who was president of CBS News for several years in the 1980s, wrote this: "News organizations which claim to be neutral have long been creeping leftward, and their loathing of Mr. Trump has accelerated the pace. To many journalists, objectivity, balance, and fairness, once the gold standard of reporting, are not mandatory in a divided political era, and in a country they believe to be severely flawed," end quote. Leslie, I come to you on this. I've heard you time and time again say that, it's not like it's a secret that some of the media are left-leaning. What do you make of this?
Harris, I have to say, I like the fact you remember things I say. Look, the lines have been blurred for a long time. I remember years ago on radio that one day I would report the news as an anchor, and another day I would do a talk show. And my boss said, look, you have to pick which of those two jobs you want to do. You can't report the news and then give your opinion about it, because a journalist reports the news, reports the facts, hopefully. And those like me, a strategist, an analyst, a talk show host, they opine about the facts. Those lines have been blurred. I think it's not only confusing to the public, but I think it's what's become normal. So I actually would agree with what the former CBS head is saying there. And that's sad. There should be a difference. There absolutely should be a difference between this is news and this is somebody giving their opinion about the news that we have out there. And I feel very strongly about that.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Leslie, this has always been the case, whether it's politicians saying that we need to do away with airplanes and then flying themselves back and forth, whether it's privately or as much as possible. But especially during this lockdown, one of the most painful things for people has been, people telling them, my job is essential, but yours is not. And this kind of strikes the same chord where it's, no, you can't travel, you can't be on the boat. But if it's true, then it's, well, for my family, it makes sense. It should be allowed.
I think that leaders, I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, need to lead by example. They do own a home in that area, but they don't live in that area all the time. And you know what, Melissa, I'm not giving her a pass on this, but I've got to say, a husband doing something or not listening to his wife? Come on. It wasn't her request, it was his request. But still, it doesn't help the situation. She needs to lead by example in her family as well.